I hope you guys you're having a good rest and you're refreshed and ready to go through more content today. But you must have listened to what we were talking about yesterday, and you must be thinking about these things, I assume. So when you think about things which been talked about in the workshop, then two things happen, two possibilities. One is that what you heard made some sense to you. So if it makes sense, then you might want to share it. This is what I liked, and this is how it connected with me, like that. And the second thing is, some things you might have heard, and they're not connected with you. So you might have a question. So in either case, whether it's a question or you want to share, let's start with you guys. Any sharings on what you heard in last few days, and otherwise, if any question. Yes.
After the session yesterday night, I realized that most of the time when I talk to my friends or chat with my friends, I was observing myself uh, that am I in excited mode or normal mode. So most of the time I realized that excited mode is always with us. So
Uh,
yes, exactly. So observation uh, for ourselves is a very nice task. I realize that.
okay.
I would like to like it's more like a question for like in the circumstances that I have been like
Hmm.
faced in I observe myself like we talk about the highs like but like do not talk about much more about the lows like that is a like important very important part of our life like it's very difficult to come out of the low
Hmm.
for example like personally I like to be in the normal mode.
Hmm.
So whenever there is internal disturbance, I observe myself and came to my like normal mode after like in the normal life.
Hmm.
It's part
Hmm.
like sometimes I confuse when there is a like uh, major events like for example losing someone dearly one or seeing a loved one in a great trouble like
Yes.
so in that situation when I observe like I am in a like in a sad mode or like I have like losing myself like
Yeah.
and there are two thoughts like first is like observe myself and came to normal level
Hmm.
so it seems like if I am doing that
Hmm.
I am losing some empathy like I am not feeling their grief like and in that situation like I seem like I should be in depressed with them
Yeah.
So, but
Right.
the other thing like if I am going depressed like it is going to hurt internally me like it's I am not going I have no control over the circumstance I am not going to change anything but even though like I am sometimes confused in that like sometimes
Hmm.
I choose to be depressed like forcefully depressed myself
Yes.
don't to come to the normal level
Hmm.
so this is like what should I do.
That you'll have to decide, but what you're saying is quite relatable. That this whole thing about empathy. So empathy is not going into the sorrow yourself. It is realizing that the other person is in a state, and there is a reason for that, and how can be helpful in this. That is the full empathy. So if how can you be helpful? If you can realize that, you will only be if you're able to relate to that person's situation, the causality of that situation, why this happened. You understand that. How can it be addressed? And if it can be addressed, some things like somebody dying, it is. We need to understand that that will happen. We all have a fixed duration or certain duration between life and death. We all have to die one day. So this is an event which is given, right? So understanding this will allow us to uh, remain calm in such situations. Being calm is not being empathetic to others, right? And uh, you provide support. If you've got empathy, you will provide support. Support is what is needed at that time, right?
And one more thing, like there's a like some days are very our like energy is low, we feel low, and
Yeah.
I think if you don't observe yourself, like these are the more depressing days, like we are feel like something is happening, like man nahi lag raha.
Hmm.
So these days are normal, like happen with after a few months or after like this the frequency is
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And I observe myself, and I know uh, it is a temporary phase, like it may be for the 1 day or 2 day, and for that on that period I go on the back seat, like I just keep with myself and I'm not doing anything, like I'm just like sitting or and doing nothing, like, and these things will pass, like everything will be sorted out. Is this a right approach, or like I should go like if why I'm feeling low I have to fix it right now? And
No. So, see, if one is feeling low, first is acknowledging the fact and knowing the fact there is, I'm feeling low. That is very important. So, the moment you do that, the observer separates from this feeling. So, there is a higher self in you which is able to view that. That itself gives you some control over things. Right? The moment you see that you're feeling low, you that I of you has been able to separate itself from that circumstances which is making you feel low. But you say, okay, this is going on. So that gives you some power at that moment. One. Second thing is, uh, what is the cause? Why am I feeling low? Maybe in that situation you won't be able to work. That is not the issue. See, what happens is during the event, when you are affected, trying to work out things usually doesn't work. Right? But once you are out of event, you pass that state, now you can analyze it. Now you can see why it was happening, what was the cause behind it, what is the principle governing this, and then address it. It won't get addressed immediately, but at least you initiated the process. So any problem can be addressed. That is the main thing. Right? If you understand the principles governing it. Right? But what happens is when we are affected by the event, we think a lot about it. Right? Suppose we have a fight between husband and wife. Then we are trying to explain my viewpoint to her, and she's explaining her viewpoint to me. But once that fight is over, we are okay. We carry on with normal things. We get busy. We never go back to the why did that happen? What was the thing actually there? In that agitated state, we are trying to explain to each other. Where neither I am able to observe properly, neither is she. So, if something has happened, we must notice there is a problem here, and this needs to be addressed. And this can only be addressed in a calm state. You can't explain things when you are agitated. And you can't understand things when you are agitated. But at times, we get stuck there. We want to explain when we are agitated, and we want the others to explain to us, why did you do this? Right? So if once we understand this, that no explanation can take place in excited state, no understanding can take place in excited state, then you wait for things to calm down and then sit down in a proper manner, and because we are cooperating with each other. We are in a relationship, so we need to work out things. Does it make sense? Yeah. Take the mic.
I mean, it completely makes sense that we only when we are in our normal state, it is then that we are able to communicate like a sane person, with sensitivity and trying to understand other person also. But I have observed that sometimes, if in this moment I'm feeling very angry with somebody, and I do not communicate it to the person, feeling that अगर बोला तो बाद में problem होगा. But sometimes it happens that if I'm not communicating right away, it builds up, and it adds on to it, and later on the level of anger is higher. So yeah, what about that?
Yeah, but that is again happening because even after the event, you are not communicating. Na? It is still bottled up inside you. And then again another event happens, then some more emotion which is bottled up, and then again something happens, and then comes a point it all bursts out, right? So what is being said that when the event happens, if you see it, there is something wrong, this needs to be addressed, this can't be ignored, right? So you wait for yourself to calm down, and then you must understand the situation, what is happening, what is bothering you. Then talk to the person. The talking has to take place, the communication has to take place. Without that, there is no resolution. See, there is one very interesting phenomena which happens is, I'm feeling something, right? Because I can see it, I assume others are also able to see what I'm feeling. I'm feeling angry. My wife might be paying attention somewhere. She doesn't realize I'm angry. But I'm saying I'm angry for last 1 hour and she doesn't even know. Does that happen? People cannot see within us. They can only see the actions expressed through our body in form of expressions, in form of language, body language. And they make a guess what is happening here. So we can help them. Why are you making a guess? I'll tell you what is happening here. This is the way we have to support each other. This is what I'm feeling. But to tell what you're feeling, you first have to identify what you're feeling. We are very confused in these states because we've not, in practice, to observe ourselves and identify what we are feeling actually. Right? When you start observing yourself and you start seeing this is what you're actually feeling, then the same feeling, when the other is feeling it, you will be able to detect it. Yeah. So I won't say primary or secondary. I'll say these are steps. So first you have to observe, then you have to communicate. Though both are equally important. Okay. Mike.
So for me, I thought
No, these mics
hello.
are giving trouble. Take this.
Okay,
Take
that
this.
you have to hold
Just
it.
turn it off. Turn it off.
So uh, last night and today morning, I was reflecting a lot around observation. And at least for me, I can talk only about myself. I realize that there are times when my observations are incomplete in the sense they are actually not observations. I directly get into inferring something. So what I realized that you can actually only observe facts as is, but our inferences that she's like this only, or that is because, and so going deeper into it, I realized that my past experiences and what I've inferred from them often clutters the current situation. And I forget that probably I have grown and the other person too has grown.
Yes.
So somewhere you lose focus on, and you're still dealing with that person, thinking he is what he was in the past or he or she as to what they were in the past. And that's where the conflict becomes larger and more intense. Um, Even if it's not a conflict, even if it is some, a feeling, a positive feeling of love or
Yeah.
whatever, even that could be intense, but that's not probably the reality. So right now I'm staying with this feeling, and even about the normal state and the high state and the depressed or the low state. I think these are very natural and they do happen.
Yeah.
So somewhere I felt that I cannot tell myself that I shouldn't feel all these states. But what I do when I'm in that state is what is important.
Yeah.
Well, how do I work through it, and what do I do with it? Or do I want to constantly be on a high, and then how is it affecting me? I think being aware of that is more important. And initially, before jumping into what should I do.
Yeah.
So that was a great reflection for me yesterday. In fact, it was quite nice. It helps me a lot. So thank you.
Good. This brings to mind one interesting phenomena. Just like you right now said that the other person might have moved ahead and we just have the image. So first thing is that uh, by default, we don't interact with the person. We interact with the image of the person in our heads. So we're not interacting with the reality, we are interacting with the impression of the reality that we are carrying in our heads, in our imagination. So that image needs to be updated regularly. How would you do that? By talking. How are you? What are you feeling? Right? What are you planning? Getting to know the person. Things which you want others to know about you, asking those same things from the other. Right? So that is one thing, that we interact with images. We don't interact with the person. So when you start observing the person, then this image will get updated more frequently. You'll be more updated. You'll know this is what is happening with the person. Otherwise, that whole habit of labeling a person and judging a person, those carry on for a long, long time. Okay. So that is one thing. Second thing is, like you come to this workshop, for example. Now, you might find something very interesting in this, and you might start practicing it, and you'll see some changes coming into you. So you'll be very happy. But others around you are still seeing you through that image. They don't see that you've changed. So at times you get impatient that why are they not seeing my change? I'm trying so hard. Right? And in that impatience, we say or do something, which in turn reinforces my earlier self. So it's very counterproductive. Right? So this brings us to the most important value of living in humane conduct, which is what we call patience or resoluteness. That this is, I'm resolute in the fact that this is the way I have to live. I will not get disturbed from this. I'm committed to this. It's a long-term commitment of living in a certain manner. So other will take his own time, his or her own time, to realize that change has happened, because one or two evaluations don't happen in events. They happen over a period of time. So suppose you were not as supportive as you have become now. For the other person to realize, it might take a week, might take a month, might take a year. But if you get sidetracked because the other person had not recognized you, then you will just break down that the formation, updation of your image in their head, that process will break down. So you need to have patience in that sense. Okay? And your image will get updated on basis of your conduct only, not what you're saying, not what you're thinking. The other will only evaluate you on basis of your conduct. Right now, one other issue is when we talk a lot about a lot of things, but we live something else. So that difference always confuses the other. He's saying this, but he's living this. So there has to be coherence in how you think, what you speak, and what you live, what you do. Okay? Okay. Anything else? sharing or question? Yes.
So, since we are talking about all this, so I have one sharing from how I was in the last workshop. So, I went with a very negative image of what the whole thing would be. I came back with a very positive image. I was like, I'll make these changes, these changes, these changes in my life. I'll respond to people in this way. But my 24, 25 years of life, I have lived in certain manner. And then there was this week where life was very different. So when I came back, I was a different person. I was trying my best that I'll respond in a certain manner. I'll not get angry. I'll not expect these things from other person. That is too much responsibility for the other person. But since the people around me have not changed, I went for that workshop. Nobody else went. So it just felt very exhausting. And after a few days, I was back to my old self. So that was something I just felt when other people are not giving you that kind of environment, and also your own learning is in a certain manner. 25 years I have reacted in a certain manner. 1 week of workshop can't change me completely. So it felt very exhausting.
Yeah. So the changes which happen in us, and the change which comes about under the influence, like this is a environment we are in. There is a certain impact of this environment on us. So there is certain influence of this environment. So we are behaving in a certain manner. So when the influence of the environment is allowing us to do something, we think the change has happened. But this is under the external influence that we are acting like this. Once we go out of this environment, right, our responses to the different environment could be coming from our default settings. Right? So we have to understand if this change which we see in this environment has to be permanent or long term, then we have to internalize this. And that requires a process. You get a sample of, oh, this is the environment, this is how I behaved. If you like this thing, you want the continuity of it, then you start the process or initiate the process of internalizing it. Okay? So that will help. We'll be talking about how to internalize it. Okay, please. Okay. Now, with a little bit of sharing from you guys, now we get on with the content. Okay. So we were talking about, we ended yesterday's session on this highs, lows, and normal state, right? This diagram. Right? So we've talked enough about it. We all have been able to relate to it. Next. Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit more about work from another angle. Right? So why is, like, work is one of the most important aspects for us, right? We all are doing some work, whether professionally or in the house or anywhere. We are always working. So what is the significance of work? So the first point to know about this is, what does work do? It allows, as we saw when we were doing the distinction between Jivan and body, that we can generate the resources that we need by doing some work, humane occupation, right? And generate it, it is a physical chemical thing which we consume through the body. So we as humans consume certain resources from our birth till our death. From the first day itself, we start consuming, right? We take in food, we use clothes, we use shelter, we are consuming. Is that clear? Can you understand this part? Yeah. And where is it coming from? It's being given to us by our family when we are a baby, right? Where is the family getting it from? From the society. The society is the collective from where each family, and in a family, each individual from the family takes these resources. Okay? Then we come of age, we are an adult, we start working, right? And when we work, we start producing some goods or we start providing some service. So goods and services is what we consume, and goods and services is what we produce or help provide in, we play a role in it somewhere or the other. So the work is related to production of goods or providing services, right? So, but this happens at a certain age, say 20 years onwards, we start working. And say till an age of 60, 70, depending your health, you can work. But suppose you live up to 100 years or 90 years of age, right? So 20 years at the end and 20 years in the beginning, you're not producing, you're not contributing, right? You are only contributing during your working years, right? Whatever you contribute, where do you give it? Where do you tender it? So into the society, into the collective. Like somebody's producing some goods, like somebody is stitching clothes. They go into the society. Somebody is producing something else. That goes into the society. Somebody is providing a service. That is used in the society. So as individuals or families, we provide goods or services which we tender to the society. And from society, we are taking also. So the whole interaction is the collective where people are giving something to it and taking some from it, right? As per our needs. Now, in a life journey, right? So we are taking something and we are giving something. There is a give and take now. So, and humans by nature want to be fair. They don't, in their normal states, they don't want to be exploited, right? So if you were to think, you would want a balance in this give and take, right? But if you had the tendency due to whatever reasons that you want to take more and give less, that would be, could we term that as exploitation? I want to take more but give less. So in the lifetime, I'll consume much more than I give back. Right? And the other case where you take less but give more, would that be okay? What would that be called? Generosity. Right? When you take less and give more in any exchange, right? So in a lifetime, either your give and take, net give and take comes to a balance, or you give more or take less, right? That is the humane part of humane conduct. But if you are taking more and giving less, right, that won't come under humane conduct. Because in the end, you were born, and by the time you die, you've depleted the society. You have not enriched it. And if you want to play a constructive role, you would enrich it, not deplete it. Right? So we have a very limited time, right? From say age of 20 to say age of 60, 70, when we can be productive. Right? So within that time, we have to compensate for our early years as well as our later years. Therefore, work is very important. That is one way we produce more and more. But when we produce more and more, it also impacts the environment. So we have to also look at the other end. Maybe we could regulate our consumptions. We only consume what is needed. Like yesterday we were watching that story of stuff in which they were saying that we've become consumers. That is the only thing. And that is the only thing which has been propagated. So that consume more, right? So instead of that, we start looking at our consumptions and see what is really needed by me, which doesn't mean living minimalistically. Doesn't mean eat less. It doesn't mean wear very few clothes, but keeping an eye on it. How much do I need? If I need to eat 3 chapatis, I can make arrangement for 5. Right? If my family needs 20 chapatis, I can make arrangement for 25. That's okay. But if you take away food, the food share that you are consuming or wasting, that is your responsibility. In a family of 4, you are consuming or wasting amount of food which is equivalent to feed 20 families, then you are being exploited. Right? Similarly with clothes. Similarly with other means. So at the end of consumption, there are 2 ends. One is production, one is consumption. Right? So that give and take. So to balance it out and move towards more generous way of living, we can regulate our consumptions and do commit and participate in production and providing services with awareness. Right? So this is an important point. This way, do you think we can sustain this planet if we live like this? Huh? There's a better chance, right? Right. So from this comes out the humane economics. What is that? You do a humane occupation, that means you participate in production and providing services without keeping an eye that you're not damaging the natural cycles or the society. Then self-regulated consumption, right utilization. Whatever we produce should be utilized properly in proper places. One definition of wastage is something which is misplaced. Something which should be in some place has been taken out of there, and now it is not able to get included in any cycle. That becomes waste. Right? So we must ensure that whatever we are taking from nature, it is fully utilized. If we can't utilize it, then maybe in society somebody else can utilize. For this I give one very simple example. Just go back to your houses right now. Right? Go back to your home and go to your room, open your cupboard. Right? How many of those clothes are you actually using? He's saying he can't close the cupboard because there are so many clothes inside it. So, can those things be utilized? Not by you probably, but people around you. Because if they're lying in the cupboard, they will just rot over time. every monsoon in India, so many clothes get rotten and they're thrown out because they got fungus and insects get it and things. And there are people who are without clothes. Similarly, another example, in India we have Food Corporation of India, where all the grains which are procured from the farmers are stored, and nearly 50% of it rots in a country which is suffering highest amount of hunger. So this is improper utilization or wrong utilization. What you can't use, you have to distribute. That is not only respecting human life, it is also respecting nature. Less than this, there is no human conduct. So if our actions are resulting in wasting or improper utilization or non-utilization, then here it would be inhuman conduct. Such conduct would be inhuman conduct. Okay? And last, conservation. What is conservation? Like when we have produced something, it is not immediately utilized, right? So it has to be conserved so that it can be utilized later, right? Like we're using this room, this area, so there are a lot of things here which if are not maintained, then they will get spoiled and won't be usable anymore. So it becomes our responsibility to maintain this, look after them, right? That is one conservation. Second is the sources. We need to conserve the sources of things. Like, for example, the food is coming from soil, right? All plant life is dependent on soil. So we cannot destroy our soil. We cannot create imbalances in our soil for whatever reason. Like our problem of food scarcity, on this planet right now, production of food is nearly 5-6 times more than all the humans can consume. But its utilization is much less. There are major areas of wastage. There are major areas where there is hunger. And these are because of inhuman economics. Because we do not believe that we live together. We are together in this, on this planet. So therefore, we have adopted lifestyles of exploitation. So conserving sources is very important. Conserving soil, conserving water resources, conserving our plant resources, animal resources, right? Because all of them contribute to the balance in which humans can flourish. Humans can't flourish on their own. They can only flourish with everything else. If everything flourishes, then humans can flourish. So that needs to be understood. In the well-being of all, well-being of self is included. That needs to be understood. We have practiced well-being of self and of that well-being of all will happen. There is a slogan which goes around which says, live and let live. Right? Here we have a different slogan. It says, let live and live. We have to allow living of everything, and in that we will live. If we only focus on our own living, we know what results are taking place right now. The life on this planet is in danger now. Okay? So, humane economics. So, anybody? Yeah, please.
So few days back in a fruit shop, I saw that all the mangoes were rotting. The apples are also rotting. So maybe they're not ready to sell at a lower price because the price is fixed, like 200 rupees kg apples. But the apples are rotting and the mangoes are rotting so much. So I didn't understand what is happening and why is it happening.
Yeah. Many such practices everywhere. Like to manage the prices of, say, wheat in the world market. Shiploads of wheat has been thrown into the sea. Yeah. So, yeah. So, but if we start understanding this in our own little ways, we can slowly move out of this mechanism through small steps. See, the whole idea is for me to improve my living. This is what will change the world. And this has to happen with each and every individual, each and every family. There are no shortcuts. So, am I ready to take my own responsibility? Only one person's responsibility. I'll try and live in harmony. Right? That is the question you have to answer for yourselves. There's no recommendation that you should live like this or not live like that. That you have to choose. That is your own choice. Mic de dijiye.
Sort of growing our own things in the home, uh, it's been a great pleasure. It's been free, and the fact that it has not been polluted by pesticides and things. And there, let me see, one, two, three, there are four families on our property who were well fed. We used to get nice big bunches of whatever we were growing, any greens or whatever. We had, each one of us had good four big bunches of whatever we were growing every so often, and that we all, it was wonderful to know that whatever we grew was clean, nutritious, the pleasure of seeing it growing. I think if more of us could in some way manage something like that. I mean, if you're living in a high-rise building, that's going to be a little problematic. But the very pleasure of growing your own, limited, nothing is wasted, would be a beginning. And shared, we just share it all out, whatever it is, wherever we can, however we can. It's a pleasure.
You'd be surprised what all can be done in multi-storied buildings also. There is a documentary called Power of Community, which is about Cuban oil crisis. And suddenly when USSR was no more, and there were, on communist countries, there were huge sanctions by the world forces. Cuba was one of them, and all their oil supply stopped, and because of that, the economy really broke down. And how did people manage to live in that? It's a very, very nice documentary. If you guys want, we can play it here one of these evenings. Right? And how they utilize each and every space for growing food. They car garages, they put up multi-layered structures in which they put pots in which they were growing food. Thing like that. So yeah, so if there is a will, there is a way, right? Yeah. So, yeah. So.
I'm not sure how far this is relevant to the present direction of discussion, but still I thought I'll talk about it. We are talking about what we are giving to the society and what we are taking in terms of goods and services.
Yeah.
I see a problem here in the valuation. I find the valuation very skewed. For
Yes.
example, a labor who works under the sun for 8 to 12 hours, how his labor, how his services are valued, and there's many other examples which I don't want to elaborate.
Yes.
Just to illustrate, I just gave one example.
Yes.
So I see this problem.
Yes.
So can we talk about it?
Yeah. So if you look at most of these issues, they are like some part of the population has to work a lot more and some part of population not working at all. Right? Because they have the privilege and somehow they have money and therefore they don't have to work. Some ancestor at some point acquired some wealth by some major exploitation, and that is going on generation to generation. Right? One. Then we have formed systems in which the wealth gets concentrated in hands of few. That can only happen. How can you have more health? Like we have so many billionaires right now. How is it possible for a sane society to have billionaires?
No, I think I was talking about something else. I was
Okay.
talking about division of labor.
Yeah.
Division of labor and its valuation.
Right. So I was coming to that. See, what is the systems we have to understand? They're exploitative systems. And the evaluation is for exploitation. So the powerless, his services, his efforts are valued much less compared to the powerful. Yeah, we'll have to think about something. But first of all, we have to identify the issue. So the issue is the evaluation, whatever the exchange rates or evaluation of labor, identifying labor, how much should be paid per day. Who is setting this? Right now, in last few years in India, there used to be some labor laws which said not more than 8 hours of work. That has slowly been done away. Now people are expected to work 12 hours and there are no appeals, no forums where you can go and appeal that this exploitation is taking place. Because who's making these rules? Yeah. If you look at our parliament, if we can talk about this. So how do we evaluate? So every person is capable of doing certain amount of work. So every person's effort is the currency they can use. Right? Now, because of differences in body, somebody can do within say 1 hour X amount of work, somebody can do X plus work, somebody does X minus work. So in that locality, you take an average of how much an average person is able to do, and that way you evaluate the work, the effort of the people. What work they're doing, whether they're doing in the kitchen, whether they're doing in office, whether they're doing in a lab, is the same. Right now, there is an illusion in our head that money motivates people to work harder. Profit will bring in innovation. This is just a narrative which has been thrown into the world and people have adapted it without really thinking about it. I'll give you a few examples. One, if you've heard of in the computer world, there is a operating system called Linux. It was launched in somewhere in 90s. Microsoft Windows was much before that. And Microsoft Windows was by a company which was Microsoft, which is selling it for a huge profit. Linux was developed by few enthusiasts, and it was open source and free. By the end of 90s, Linux had established itself as the most stable operating system, and most important works, which were servers, were running Linux. Even today, the most reliable work is done on those platforms. Even the consumers have started preferring that. It's the fastest growing operating system right now. It's all been developed collaboratively without any financials. People contributing because they want to improve something. Somewhere or the other, this whole idea that profit motivates. No, profit doesn't motivate. Actually, the most motivating thing is this feeling of helping the other, helping the community. But we are suppressing those ideas. We are not allowing them to come up because there are vested interests in this. People who have the power and the wealth want to maintain the status quo. And the systems are such, they promote that. If there was equal evaluation of all labor, there won't be any millionaires even. We have to ask ourselves, do we need a society where there are millionaires and billionaires? How do you accumulate so much? Because you take somebody else's share. There is no other way. Without exploitation, it is not possible. All that. Yes.
I think on a related note, thought that I tend to have is that so many times we've tried to solve these issues of exploitation and inequality and wrong valuation, social injustice through systems, through technical adjustments. You know, we'll calculate it in this formula, and everyone will agree to it, and this is how we'll function. But that is not, I feel like since that is not the problem, the problem is not rooted in technical issues. It's rooted in our, nature of, exploitation and why we're hoping to hoard more and all that. So I feel like the solution is not there either. And so any technical solution ends up failing because since the problem is not solved, which is inside us, it's a psychological, social issue. We are creative enough to bypass technical solutions also.
So any restrictions you put in form of any law, people will find ways to exploit that, right? So the problem, as Drishta is pointing out, lies in our tendency to exploit, which comes from within, from our belief system. Unless until we upgrade this belief system to more humane conduct, which won't happen without knowledge, the change won't come. Yes, Siddharth? It starts from your thought that you need to take more to survive. My share has to be larger.
Words, it's our fear of not having enough for ourselves.
Because
we don't know what our enough is. We invariably want more than we actually need. So we have to work around. So the whole thing points to each one of us, on how we can curtail this exploitation, this greed, this imbalance of economical of our economics. Put it that way, I suppose.
So here the solution which is being proposed is that I have to take responsibility for myself.
Yeah, each one of us has to be responsible, and so that we don't have
Forget
to keep,
about each one of us. I, me.
Yeah, that I agree.
Only
I'm
me.
saying me, but when I say me, we all need to be responsible.
Yeah, you have to drop that part.
Okay, me, I have to be.
I have to be
I agree.
non-exploiting.
Agreed. Yeah.
That's the only solution.
Yeah.
It's not so easy.
One can't judge anybody else, but I agree with you that it is me that has to be responsible.
But one can evaluate our own actions.
Yeah, that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If there is no sincerity in that, this exploitation will not stop.
Now, where do we go?
So this is what moral strength is all about. Without the moral strength, there is no stopping exploitation. Yes, Siddharth.
I had a question about the nature of work according to Jeevan Vidya. So there is some work that clearly you would do for others, such as farming, or there is work that you do for yourself, like being a CEO. But what about work that you would do for the sake of the work? Say, such as, which might not actually benefit other people much, but one doesn't really do for any selfish reason either, like discover, say, a new butterfly or a new star in the sky. It doesn't seem to me that that is work which is productive in this sense, but is still gratifying to oneself and still has some sort of meaning.
Yeah.
So in Jeevan Vidya, is that still within the realm of work, or is that conceptualized in some other way?
So what you're talking about is like discovering new things, for example. That is supporting the learning for the humankind. So it's a service you're providing, which is important. Humankind needs to learn about whatever we can learn about. So it is useful. So finally the criteria is, are we being useful or not? There are many ways of being useful. Right? So, and for that we provide something and we take something in return. And we always keep a check whether I'm taking more than what I'm giving. So that moral strength is needed there too.
But doesn't that create still some sort of inequality in goods provided? That a farmer might say that food, say, is more essential. Right? Does it create some sort of inequality in society where the scientist is actually creating things, consuming, but creating things which others can't consume?
But the consumption is not only individual. It is at the level of community, it is at the level of whole society or at all humankind. So studying these things, studying nature, can help us cope up with it much better. So it's a service, it's a useful service. See, if we are paying differently for different work, then it will be exploitation. But everybody is getting paid according to the amount of time and effort they're putting in, then where is the problem? And every work is a disciplined life, farmer's life or a scientist's life. So you will be living a disciplined life. So there is amount of effort which is needed for doing useful work through discipline. So you are investing yourself in it. Right? And then as a result of that investment of yourself, you add some value. And that value is the thing which is consumed by the community or the society. So value addition is the main thing. So your work will be well evaluated by the effort you put in plus the value you've added. Yes. Pass. No, that breaks down. Pass.
So, like, if 2 generations back, people are having 10 children, 11 children, is that exploitative? And if we're having a self-sustainable farm, we are able to produce for ourselves and not maybe sell in the market. So the production is equal to consumption, but we are not producing excess.
Yeah. So you see, from one angle, it is okay that we are producing something and we are consuming something. But all our consumptions are not coming from our farm. Right? We are procuring a lot more. Food is not the only thing. Right? So one might say we are not connected to the grid. We are not taking electricity from the community. We are using solar panels. Where did the solar panels come from? We cannot dissociate ourselves from the humankind. Each one of us is together in this. We are connected to each other. That is very important to know. We can't be islands of sanity. That is just an illusion. But we can be source for sanity. But sanity will prevail whenever it prevails, will be with everybody. Otherwise, we'll end up by othering everybody else. Just a few of us are here, and rest of the world is there. They do this, they do that. Then you'll go back to the age-old problems or the narrations from the religions. There are good and there is evil. So they become evil, we become good. And everybody, from their viewpoint, they are good and everybody else is evil. And what does good and evil do? They fight with each other. So our life ends up in a fight. Why? War and struggle. We have to respect the fact that we are part of the humankind. Some people are more aware, some are less. That doesn't mean they are evil or they are to be rejected. Would you like to be rejected? Would any one of us want to be rejected by others? If we don't want that, then why are we doing it? Our problem comes from the fact that we have adopted systems which are exploitative. We have education which teaches exploitation. We have processes which are exploitative. But these all are being operated upon by us. So we have a system in family, we can very easily check it out, is it exploitative? And we can correct it. Where is the problem with that? My exchanges within my family, are they nurturing or exploitative? For nurturing, you'll have to be self-disciplined. You can't do, I like to do this, therefore I am doing this. This whole talk about freedom, which basically boils down to doing anything I wish to do. Freedom is self-regulation. In Hindi, the word is swatantrata. Swa means self, tantrata means being in control. Yes.
So we are talking about valuation of labor and how we do it. I mean, how we've been doing it. I'm just kind of stuck there that how are we supposed to do it? Suppose a maid comes to my house and she's working, and we have a set valuation for the work they do
Yeah.
in our society. According to what we are discussing over here, one question is who should be doing this valuation, and the second is how do we do this valuation?
Very good. So who should be doing it? All the parties involved. Right? I can't evaluate you alone. Right? I can pass it. That is a judgment, passing a judgment on you. You have to be a willing participant in this evaluation process with full freedom. And then we both can do a mutual evaluation. So evaluations are always mutual. They're not one-sided. They're only one-sided in early life, when the human being is just a child, because they are still learning the ways. But after a certain age, they will not accept your evaluations one-sided. Right? But the changes you want to bring about, what change, like maid, for example, your housemaid who's coming to help you out, it is not an individual's interaction with the family, it's a system. Right? So at least a local community will have to participate in this. Right? In less than that, it won't happen, this change. One family can't change the rate, because then it will affect the others and they will complain and there will be a fight, all those issues happen. So at least a local community has to work with that. So what change will come at what level, this needs to be studied and understood. Like environmental change, individuals can't do it, small communities can't do it. It's a state level issue. How our energy is being produced, how it's being utilized, how our goods are being produced, how they're being, it's a state level issue. Of course, we as individuals can be aligned with the good practices, but we must be aware this won't make much difference at the larger level. So we need to make sure that it reaches there while we are practicing this. I'm not recommending not to practice this part. I'm, in fact, advising the other. So we have to see what change will come at what level. This needs to be identified. Something will happen at individual level, something will happen at family level, something will happen at the society level, something will happen at the planetary level. Okay.
Just one more thing that okay, valuation is being done. You're right, I absolutely get it. But every time I'm just looking at myself and the people around, don't we think that every time we have been evaluated less? Like in any sense, and if that would come under exploitation, so I would feel that somebody else is exploiting me, and that other person would feel that I am exploiting them by asking for more money. So this exploitation would be like mutual then.
Yeah. So presently the systems are employer wants to give the least amount of salary for maximum amount of work. Employee wants maximum salary for least amount of work. Both are exploiting each other. Right, one. Second is the power structure, the hierarchy. At every level, you are being exploited by people above you and you are exploiting people below you. And we think this is respectful. Okay? So till the time we place work properly in our lives at the level of understanding, what is the significance of work in human living? This is the significance that we started talking about today morning. according to Jivan Vidya. You already have some understanding of work, right? This is a proposal. See what makes sense. Another aspect to the work is, and more than work, it is more about this part, consumption. So if you want more and more resources, you'll have to work more and more. True? And for work, you need to put in a lot of time. And where will this time come from? You'll take time from your wife, your friend, your brother, your sister, your mother. The time which is needed to be happy, you'll cut it out. And then you'll say, I'm stressed. I need a holiday. Or I need to go on a drive. So there has to be a balance. So now the balance is, what do I feel is the priority in my life? Happiness or consumption? There can't be, or happiness is basically in harmonious relationships. So either consumption or harmonious relationships. Both will need my time, attention, effort, both require that. Unless until I do that, I devote time and effort and attention, neither can be achieved. So how much time and effort and attention I commit to work and how much time to my behavior. The work and behavior balance is very important. So when you jump onto the, I want to accumulate more and more and more, you become more and more and more isolated because you're not spending time in relationships. And then one day you discover there's nobody with you. And you can't fix that then. Loneliness can't be fixed by money. You can hire people to be around you, but it doesn't take away loneliness. But that, to end loneliness, you need intimacy with people. And that can only be built with time. So if you spend time together, by paying attention to each other, understanding each other, then only will the intimacy build up. That is the only thing which will end your loneliness. And I've seen, not only in the corporate world, in the activist world, in activism, people are so committed to their work because they feel this is very important. But at the end of the day, they are very lonely. And they're sad, even though they're doing so much for the community, for the society, for the planet. Themselves, they're sad and lonely. Don't take my word for it. Please explore this on your own. See it. Okay?
You mentioned about corporate and activists, but it also applies to civil services.
Of course.
Like they are expected to work for long hours,
Yeah.
and they are told that it is a great honor to work for the country. But in that process of working, they are neglecting their emotional well-being and their other psychological needs, and it obviously creates more chaos and stress, and it will reflect in the work they are doing. So it is a cycle.
Yesterday itself at lunchtime, I was talking to two associates of Prashantji, and he was very sincerely sharing, like our nature, because of the nature of our work, becomes like we are very impatient. We want to get to the point immediately. Otherwise, we just push people away. Says, but it is needed for the kind of work we are doing right now. So he says, at times we feel like we have to take a break from this work, but at that time we are lonely. Anyway, yeah. 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 So when you're devoting yourself to something else and not spending time, so your partners also get lonely, no? Your families, your children. The depression in young children is increasing rapidly because we're living isolated lives. And there is so much fear in the society, right? You don't know what the neighbor will do to the child, so you can't even allow them to go to the neighbor in cities. So they're cooped up inside the houses. The only thing left is some screen. That's what keeps them company. Okay, moving ahead. So that we're talking about these four aspects, and before that we were talking about Jivan and Sharir, right? So I want to talk a little bit about what is the Jivan, what are its faculties. I won't go into each and every detail of it, but just a little bit. Okay? These are the imperishable powers of Jivan. And we have used some Hindi words for that, because I can't find any equivalent English words for them. So these are names. So as name, you can take it as it is. Okay. So from outside to inside, it's Man, Vritti, Chit, Buddhi, Atma. Atma is a word which is very popular in the theistic Indian philosophies. This is not the same, even though the word is being used, but the definition is different. We're not talking about the way they talk about it. First thing to know about this is, these are inseparable one unit. These are just part of one unit. Just like I'm a human being, this is my human body. It is one unit, even though I have arms, I have legs, I have head. They don't have any separate entity. If my arm was cut off, then it's not a body. It will rot away and end. It is only in its unified form that it is like a human body. But in case of body, you can separate the arm and legs. But in this case, you can't even do that. This can't happen. They are just together. They are inseparable. So, Man, Vritti, Chit, Buddhi, Atma. For the imperishable powers, they are imperishable forces. These power is potential and force is in action. Okay. So this is the potentiality. This is there in a state, and when it activates itself in these forces. The forces are, the force of Man is hope, the force of Vritti is thought, the force of Chit is desire, the force of Buddhi is wisdom, and force of Atma authentication. Remember that knowledge and evidence? So when you live on basis of evidence, that is authentication. The knowledge happens in Atma. The ultimate knowledge or the fundamental knowledge takes place here, which is called realization or Anubhav. And its evidence is in living. So Anubhav and evidence gives us of authentication. I think this battery is about to go. Okay? And this is, think of it as a sphere or a Jivan as a round object which has, it's outside man. Inside the man there is vritti, then chit, then buddhi, and atma is the center. Okay. Since man is on the outside, this is what interacts with the body. Body is operated through man. So whatever choices we make, they happen in man, and then it's converted to our action. Right? Before spiritual awakening, only these 4.5 activities are active. Others are lying dormant. So there are 5 inward activities. These are for changing the qualitative state of the Jivan, which happens through understanding. So the qualitative upgradation happens with the activities of perception, comparison, contemplation, enlightenment, and anubhav. Right? And the outward activities, or these are the activities with which you impact the world. Right? So these are evidence, resolve, visualization, analysis, choice. So this is inwards. I think this is gone. Only these activities are functioning and half of this. This comparison is basically an activity which basically has perspectives, and we use it for prioritizing what is important to us, what we want to do first, what is second. So setting the priority of things. So that comparison. We'll go into detail of this. Okay. Perception is basically whatever indications which are coming. Recognizing.
Excuse me, sir. Sir, कल आपने जैसे बोला था कि
English.
Sorry. Yesterday you said that knowledge has like I don't remember the slide exactly, but there was an arrow that was going down, and there were 4 parts like knowledge, recognition,
knowing, believing, recognizing, and responding.
So do they, like, I'm just getting confused between the outward activity here and those 4 activities there.
Okay. See, that was a down arrow just because we had written. We could have written knowing at the bottom, believing over that. See, so there is an inward and outward there too, in the sense knowing is the deepest and believing is after that, and then recognizing, which is more outward, and response is always outside. So that is there, right? So if we were to look at this here, so knowing will be here at this level, buddhi and atma level. Okay? Believing is at this level, chit. And recognizing, these two combine, and response is through man. Okay? Though these are only 20 items here, there are many details. There's whole one book written on this. Okay? So, though it is out of scope to discuss each and every one of them, but just to point out that this is what the conscious, if you are to understand the conscious aspect of human beings, according to Jivan Vidya, we have to study all this. Okay, I'll talk about a little bit about some of them. Yeah.
I do get that you said that Vritti and Chit. I mean, I understand Man, Buddhi, and Atma, but Vritti and Chit, if you can explain a little bit.
Okay.
One thing, yesterday you said that we never take decision from Man. So it's just a language.
Huh. It's just a language, yeah. I know. So language has been used in so many ways. We are not very disciplined in using language. You know, we like we say man se karna hai, mere mind mein aaya. We use language mind, man interchangeably, right? Sometimes, like you were pointing out, we say we took the decision from heart, you know, or from brain. So there are no defined ways of doing it. But the kind of meaning we want to communicate, that does get communicated, because we are not very precise in these things. Here it becomes slightly more precise, right? So the definitions are more defined here about these things. Okay? So what is Man? Man is the faculty which hopes. And what is the hope for? For happiness. So Man is active for happiness, in hope of happiness. So its perception and its choices are for happiness. What do you choose? That what will make you happy? Or next, Vritti, its force is thought. And what is the thought for? For concluding how to be happy. So you analyze, you compare, to come to a conclusion, where is happiness? Whether it is in eating, whether it is in playing, or is it in traveling, or is it with spending time with some loved one, or doing something for the planet, where is the happiness? So that thinking part, or the thought, which is basically comprised of comparison analysis, right? You do it here. So Vritti is active or works for concluding what is happiness. Chit. Chit functions to live in happiness. So what does Chit have? Chit has the ability to visualize, for example. In visualization, there is memory, there is planning, there's connecting things together, synthesizing, right? This is all happening in your Chit. And if you look at yourselves, what you're living is your desires. You desire to come for this workshop, so you came here. You desire to do the work you are doing at whatever profession you are, therefore you're living it. You desire a certain kind of family, therefore you are working in that form, right? So whatever we are living is our desires. And the desires basically are to maintain happiness. We think if we do this workshop, it will give us some happiness. We think if we do this work, it will give us some happiness. We think we are with these people, we desire to be safe with our friends, this will give us happiness. So Chit is working continuously to live in happiness. So human being is driven initially from here, from the Chit, from our desires. Okay? Buddhi's ability is to understand, right? That's why wisdom, right? When the understanding is complete, then Buddhi's force becomes wisdom. Then its influence on the rest of the things. Then in the influence of wisdom, we desire. In the influence of wisdom, we think. In the influence of wisdom, we hope. So all this becomes regulated by wisdom. Right now, in influence of desire, we think. In the influence of desire, we hope. Can you see the difference? So till the time this faculty becomes fully active, our desires can be in any direction. So buddhi functions to understand. What is there to understand? So existential or natural laws, natural regulation, and natural balance. You can only understand these three things. There is nothing else to understand. So when you understand this, you understand order. So you basically understand order by understanding the natural laws, by understanding the natural regulation, by understanding the natural balance. So if we want to understand human beings, we need to understand the natural laws governing human beings, the natural regulation governing human beings, and the natural balance of human beings. If we want to understand the animals, then we need to understand the laws governing the animals. We need to understand the regulation governing the animals. And we need to understand the balance in the animal world. We want to understand the solar system. We have to understand the laws governing it, the regulation governing it, and the balance therein. Okay? So understanding is only of these three things about the topic which we want to understand. Atma functions for realizing the fundamental truth. What is fundamentally there? We'll be talking about it when we start our discussion on the study of natural order. Right? So we'll be going in a lot of detail there about this. So basically, the fundamental reality can be realized by any human being if they study properly and practice properly and come here. And this completes the spiritual awakening. When the anubhav takes place or the realization takes place, and one starts living with evidence, and therefore becomes authentic, then your default setting becomes of humane conduct. Then you become a giver rather than a taker. So you become very supportive in every aspect of life. So you look at your life journey as that I'm here for some time, and this is the positive effect I'm going to create in this time. So that is what the journey is all about. Right? What happens after death? Nothing. You start have another journey. Again you give a positive impact. What about after that? Again we have. So we keep on going through life cycles. And whatever positive effect we create today is available to us in our next journey. So the living human beings carry the knowledge, the systems, the whatever we have achieved, our achievements, living human beings carry it as a society. And our journeys are to contribute into this. And this way, the society is a living organism. It is dynamic. And there is a intergenerational, from one generation to the other, to the other, to the other, contribution in it. So we are connected over generations, that is over time, and with every human being on the planet. So in vastness, in expanse. This we talked about when we were talking about the contributions of people in the food we intake. Right? So this is what Jivan is supposed to be. This is very brief, and there's a lot more details in this for those who are interested, but they are out of the scope of this workshop because we do this over a month, study of Jivan. Yes, please. Mike.
questions. One is that why is it yellow? Like, why doesn't resolve happen to run the body or evidence happen to run the body? Is there a particular reason that it begins from the yellow highlights begin from from visualization onwards? And I don't remember the.
Okay. Just go back. Huh. So this much is sufficient to live as thinking of yourself as a body. This much is needed for that. So fulfilling the needs of body, interacting with people for bodily needs, this much is more than sufficient. Yeah. So human being has a body and Jivan, right? Jivan and body composite. Since Jivan is not aware of itself, it thinks of itself as a body and lives as a body. In that time, only this much is functional. So when through education or through study, we realize that we are more than this, and we have an inkling of this, right? Whenever somebody treats you merely as a body, how do you feel? You don't accept it. You are more than a body. All of us, right? That's why, say, a young person when is told, you're too young for this, it's not acceptable to them. Or an elderly person is told, you're not too old to do this. Or somebody with a disability is told, no, you can't do this. Right? Because we have an inkling that we are more than a body. We are something more than what we are perceiving right now. Right? But what it is, it's not clear. It only becomes clear when we do a systematic study of it. Okay? So this part is the spiritual aspect. And this part is the intellectual dimension, the one we saw in the earlier diagram. Here there is no reference from the spiritual dimension, so this will function with our own assumptions, our own belief systems, right? Our own imagined laws, regulation, and balance. Right? So like for example, in 80s, when people realized that too much deforestation was taking place, so the government of India has decided we'll do afforestation. So they started planting eucalyptus and poplar trees everywhere. Right? They thought this will bring about balance. Yeah. But it damaged that local ecosystem because those trees didn't belong there. They took too much of the resources. They disturbed the balance. So imagined balance and the real balance, they're two different things. So with the body, the behavior dimension, and with the body, the work dimension. When we are interacting with humans, that is behavior. When we are interacting with the nature, that is the work dimension. Okay, the 4 dimensions that we talked about in reference to the Jivan, with little more detail. Yes.
So the second question was that yesterday you had shown us that first there was an animation, and first our assumed laws and were in contrast to our like what is actually there in the world.
Yeah.
So when you are right now, you were talking about buddhi.
Yeah.
And you said that we need to know what are the natural laws.
Yeah.
You mean in opposition to what we currently believe are the assumed laws?
Yeah.
So it might be the case that we, even though currently our buddhi and atma might be operational, but they are not in terms of what objective reality or natural laws exist.
No. What we're saying is when we See, these, I'll give you a very simple example. Right? We have some potentials that we are not utilizing. Like, for example, your power to think, you can utilize as you want. That is within your control, right? If somebody was to give you anything to think, you can think about that issue, right? Similarly, if you have a power of desiring, so you can utilize, it's under your control. But this power to understand, it is still not under your control, the buddhi. Okay. At times we think memorizing is understanding. At times we see logical analysis is understanding. But understanding is something else. Okay. So though we have this inbuilt thing, and therefore it keeps making its need felt within ourselves, but we mistake other activities to be it. Why don't we come to it? Because we are focused so much around the body. For body it is not needed. For maintaining the body, doing bodily functions, is not needed. It is only when you want to live in harmony that this kicks in. Then it's really needed. When it's needed, then it starts functioning. Then slowly we practice it and it comes within our control. Can you raise one eyebrow? I can't. Some people can. The muscles are there in you and me, but I have not practiced using that muscle, therefore I can't use it. I didn't have the need to use that, so I never practiced. The dancers have the need to use it, so they practice and get control over it. Similarly like that here. Okay? Yes, please. So, Anubhav and evidence. So, evidence is on basis of Anubhav. When you see the fundamental reality, then you see everything how it is rooted in it. So, at every level, you start aligning with it. That is the evidence. So, if you don't have Anubhav, you don't have any reference of the fundamental reality, and therefore you do not know how to align. So you keep doing the guesswork, okay, this will be alignment.
So if behavior is defined as things between humans and humans,
yes,
then suppose you're like a counselor or a teacher or something like that.
Yeah.
That's it's not with nature, right? So would that count as work, or then that's just behavior? So
that's behavior.
So then so if you're just a counselor, then say I'm a counselor, then I'm not doing any work.
By a technicality, yes.
Okay.
But life is little more than technicalities. See, the main purpose is to find a way through the mess we are in. So, not to get stuck on technicalities for the time being. Counseling is a good service to provide. It's a useful service. Right? So, it is needed. We need people to do that. Now, that person who is a good counselor probably also has needs, right, for resources, and doesn't have any other means, so they can definitely take it from here right now. But there can also be counselors who meet the physical requirements through some work and do the counseling as a separate part. Third situation, they live in a family where work is being done in a manner, and say I'm of age of say 70 years and my working age is over, but I can still be a good counselor. In fact, 70-year-old people would be very good counselor. So they could do counseling at that time. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. We've done it for thousands of generations. This is the default way. in different people, the need keeps on popping up from time to time to time. Sometimes we address them, some people try to address it. Most of the time we say, these are nonsense questions, there is nothing going to come out of it, this is all philosophy, there is no meaning to life in this. Be practical, do this. That's the advice you'll get everywhere. Then comes in the later part of age, you've done all this, all the work you needed to do, you've done. By the time you have also concluded relationships, nobody is with you, you're alone. So then, out of compulsion, you might start looking towards spirituality. That also happens. Yes, Mike?
Gunjan said that we can live without spiritual dimension, but I think more or less we all have very few spiritual dimension. We have some realization, maybe very few, but we have, I think we have.
See, she's saying that she has some realization which is there. We have realized certain things, but when I say realization here, it means something, and when we, in the intellect domain, when we say realization, sometimes we are able to see the logic of things, then we say we have realized it, right? Sometimes how things work, we say, oh, I've realized it, right? So it's just, we have to be careful we are using the language, which is the tool. For example, when you're using, say, compound, the word compound, when you use it in chemistry, it has a definite meaning. But when you're using it in literature, it can be used more freely, right? So this is like a technical language here. But for the time being, I'm just pointing out there is this language, there is a disciplined study of this. Before that, it's okay to use it loosely if you're using it. It's fine. How much time? 4-5 minutes? 9 minutes, okay. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Yeah. So this half activity which was active, which was comparison, we said 4.5, so comparison was half, right? So what is this comparison? It is basically perspectives for decision making, and through this we set our priorities, right? So there are two sets. One set is living as a body. When we think of ourselves as a body, there is one set we utilize. The other set is when we live on basis of knowledge. Okay? So, next. So this set, if you look at any decision you have made today, yesterday, or any time in your life, you'll find either the decision is based on likes or dislikes. Like in the morning, I went to get tea. Okay? Why? Because I like tea. So I had tea. Right? So liking is a sensory pleasure. Then suitable, unsuitable to our body. That also helps us make some decisions. Right? Like day before yesterday, I didn't have tea. Why? Because I was feeling a little bit acidic, and the tea would have complicated things. So I thought it was unsuitable. So I didn't have tea. Right? And once I went to a place, right now we went to a place near Beer. They were selling tea, but it was 250 rupees. I thought it was too expensive for having tea, paying 250. so it was not profitable. So I didn't have tea. So the same action of having or not having tea can be rooted in our likes or dislikes, or suitable, unsuitable for our health, or profit or unprofitable. Okay? So this is, all these three are body centric, all related to the body. Resources are also for body. Suitable, unsuitable is health. Health is of the body. And senses, of course, are in body. Interestingly, there cannot be any uniformity in this. What I like, he might not like. What he likes, I might not like. All of us in this room won't have same likes. There will be variations. Right? Similarly, what is healthy for me, or what is suitable for my health, and what is suitable for your health could be different, because the body types are slightly different. Right? Like, for me, cold weather is very conducive, but for my wife, it is very troublesome. Right? So if we have to live as a family, we can't live in a very cold place or a very hot place. Right? Similarly, in case of profit, my profit is your loss, your profit is my loss. So there can't be any uniformity in this. So if our basis of making decisions is limited to this, we can't have any universal systems. And right now all our systems are a combination of these. All our decisions are somewhere or the other on basis of this. You can examine this by looking at any of your decisions you made today or yesterday or day before. Can you see it with you? Take any decision of yours. You'll find it somewhere in these three. Huh?
I have health issues. Bus is not suitable for me, so I decided that I will going in train.
Okay. So these are all body centric, and when we are living on basis of 4.5, this is our perspective of looking at things and deciding things, setting our priorities, setting our preferences. Then the next set, and this is accessible right now. This set becomes accessible only through knowledge, only through understanding, or we can say only through wisdom. Just, unjust. I will do this because this is the just behavior in the relationships. I won't do this because this will be unjust. This becomes our basis of functioning, our decision making. Right? Just, unjust. This is one criteria or one perspective. This, which is relationship centric. What is fair in the relationship? Whether am I fulfilling my responsibilities or not? Right? Righteous and unrighteous. So is it right for the larger good, or is it wrong for the larger good? Right? This is order centric. Will it be good for the society if we do this? Right? Like some people are cutting the trees here. If they were to look at it, from this place, then you would not cut trees. people are setting forest fire, they would not be doing this. This is not good for society. Right? Truth, untruth. This is for continuity. Right? Continuity is a very important point. Where does continuity come from? Continuity can only come from something that is stable. Stability is a function of balance. Balance, or what we call harmony. So only harmonious things are continuous. Right? So harmony in nature, harmony in humankind, that will ensure continuity. So all our actions are towards or for continuity of things. If that becomes the primary way of deciding, then this is the highest spiritual level of living, when all your decisions start coming from here. In Hindi, the word is vyavastha. Systems. We are together in it, right? Like, okay, we are having organic food. Very nice. But how will everybody have organic food? What can we do about it? So we start thinking like this, then we are being order-centric, because we don't want it to limit it to us. This is good for the larger society. It should be available for everybody. So we'll need education for it. We'll need production systems for it. We'll need exchange systems for it. Right?
But we do make decisions on the basis of this in some partial ways.
Right,
We do.
right. Yeah.
But we don't have ultimate realization or anything like that yet. But we do make some decisions on the basis of on these criteria.
Yeah. But this is not our default place to go. See, in Hindi there is a word called swabhav. In English it is translated as nature of a person. Right? So it is the inherent nature which is called swabhav. Right? So this is not an inherent nature. Under some circumstances we might go to this. But this is our inherent nature by default, initially. But we as humans have the ability to upgrade ourselves. We can make this our inherent nature, intrinsic nature. And that comes through right education. Okay? So it's time for our break. Let's go and have some tea and come back in 20 minutes. Is the 20-minute break sufficient, or do you want to make it 30 minutes? Huh? 30 minutes. Okay. 11:30 then let's meet.